Okay, let's unpack this one. Imagine a story that starts with, well, a really baffling disappearance. Then there's a discovery, but it just makes things more confusing. And then, years down the line, boom, a huge turn completely changes how we see it. Today, we're really getting into the fascinating and ultimately tragic case of Alonzo Brooks. We've looked at a bunch of detailed reports, the Wikipedia page on his story, trying to piece together a clear picture for you.
Yeah, and our mission, really, is to trace how the understanding of Alonzo Brooks' death actually evolved. It wasn't straightforward at all. We want to highlight those key shifts in the investigation, the surprising facts that popped up later. We're basically here to help you follow that timeline and figure out what's really important in this pretty complex case.
So let's start with who Alonzo Brooks was. Alonzo Tyree Brooks. He was born May 19, 1980, to Billy Brooks Sr. and Maria Ramirez. When he disappeared, he was 23. He was working as a custodian back then for Countryside Maintenance in Gardner, Kansas. And it's probably relevant context that he was of African American and Mexican descent.
Right.
So the night it all went wrong was April 3rd, 2004. Alonzo traveled with 3 friends. They went to a party down in Lasinia, Kansas. That's about, 50 miles south of Gardner?
Yeah, about that.
But it's at the party itself where things apparently started to get complicated.
Mm-hmm.
Reports say racial slurs were directed at Brooks, but that might have really sparked some tension there.
And that's where it gets really interesting, or, well, concerning, I should say.
Exactly. And then as the night wore on, his friends, they left at different times. And somehow they accidentally left Alonzo behind. They said it was like a perceived misunderstanding about who was giving him a ride home.
Misunderstanding.
He didn't make it back to Gardner the next day, and that's when he was reported missing.
What's fascinating there is, well, how quickly that tension seems to have flared up. And the detail about him being left behind, especially after alleged slurs, I mean, it just immediately raises questions, doesn't it, about the whole dynamic that night.
Definitely. So after that night, his family, the Brooks family, they didn't waste any time. They went straight down to Lasigne, started searching themselves, and they got the local authorities involved.
Initially, that was the Lynn County Sheriff's Office.
Right, but they couldn't find him, so they handed the case over to the Kansas Bureau of Investigation, the KBI. But neither the KBI nor the FBI, who also got involved, they couldn't locate him initially.
No, those early searches came up empty.
But the family kept pushing. And that led to a really crucial moment, a breakthrough. On May 1st, 2004, so that's nearly a month after he disappeared, the family was finally allowed to search the property themselves, the actual property where the party was. And incredibly, on that very first day of their search, they found Alonzo's body. It was on the banks of Middle Creek, right next to the house where he was last seen.
Yeah, found by his own family after official searches failed.
That's quite something.
And then comes the initial autopsy, which just added to the confusion, really.
How so? What did it find or not find?
Well, that's the key. The postmortem showed he didn't have any broken bones. No obvious signs of, blunt force trauma or major injury. And interestingly, no biological signs of drowning in his lungs, even though he was found near water.
Wait, no clear injuries, no drowning?
Exactly. So the pathologists, well, they couldn't actually determine a cause of death. It was listed as undetermined. And this really raises an important question, right? You have a body found in suspicious circumstances near where he vanished, but no clear explanation for how he died. It was incredibly puzzling from the start.
Wow. Undetermined. So for 16 years, that's basically where it sat. A really frustrating cold case. Just no answers. But the story wasn't finished. Not by a long shot.
No.
Fast forward to June 11th, 2020. The FBI makes a pretty dramatic move. They officially reopen the cold case, and they put up a big reward, $100,000 for information about his death.
A significant step, yeah. Signaling they were taking a fresh, serious look.
Then, in July 2020, they took another major step. They exhumed Alonzo's body. It was transported to Dover Air Force Base for a new autopsy, right, by the Armed Forces Medical Examiner.
That's right. And sending it to Dover, to the Armed Forces Medical Examiner, that's significant in itself.
Why is that? What's the significance there?
Well, Dover has incredibly advanced forensic capabilities. Their medical examiner's office handles really complex cases. They have expertise that maybe wasn't available or applied back in 2004. They can often uncover details that might have been missed the first time around.
Okay, so they brought in the heavy hitters, forensically speaking.
Pretty much, and it paid off.
Yeah.
This new examination led to a pivotal conclusion. The examiner definitively concluded that Alonzo Brooks's death was a homicide.
Homicide. Wow. After 16 years of undetermined. That's huge.
It's a complete game changer. What's fascinating here is just how definitive that shift was. The acting U.S. attorney, Dustin Slinkard, he actually stated that while the FBI always suspected something was wrong, very suspicious circumstances, this new autopsy proved it wasn't an accident.
Proved it. How? What did they find that was different?
The autopsy revealed specific injuries that would not be consistent with decomposition. So these weren't just changes from the body being out there for a month. These were injuries inflicted around the time he died. Actual trauma.
Okay, so actual evidence of foul play, finally.
Exactly, and Slinkard made it clear the FBI was sparing no resource to find out who was responsible. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it just shows how vital revisiting cold cases with new technology and fresh eyes can be. It can totally reframe everything.
And all this activity, the FBI reopening the case, the homicide ruling, it brought a lot more attention, right?
Oh, absolutely. Public attention really ramped up. On July 1st, 2020, his case was featured on that reboot of Unsolved Mysteries. The episode was called No Ride Home.
I remember that. It brought the case to a whole new audience, and then something else came out through that media spotlight, didn't it? A new detail.
Yes, a really crucial one. On November 16th, 2020, Unsolved Mysteries reported something the FBI had apparently learned. They said the FBI found out about a second party happening in Lansing. That same night, Alonzo disappeared.
A second party? Seriously?
Yeah, and according to the report, people left this second party after a fight broke out there. And then those people supposedly headed over to the farmhouse party, the one where Alonzo was last seen.
Whoa. Okay, a fight at another party and people moving from that fight to where Alonzo was.
Right. This raises an important question, doesn't it? How does this new information, a whole other party, a fight, fit into the timeline? Especially with the homicide ruling. Could that fight somehow be connected? Does it complicate the original story about racial tensions? Or maybe clarify it?
That adds a whole new dimension. It wasn't just maybe tension at one party, but potentially people coming from a fight elsewhere.
It potentially widens the whole scope, yeah. The original narrative focused mostly on that one farmhouse party, the slurs being left behind. A second party, especially one with a fight, that suggests more people, maybe different groups interacting, more chaos overall. It could mean more potential witnesses or suspects, people who weren't even on the radar initially.
So it could make things more complicated, finding the truth.
Or potentially it could provide a missing link. Maybe something happened involving people from that second party that explains the injuries found in the second autopsy. The ones that led to the homicide ruling. It really changes the landscape of that night.
Okay, so let's try and synthesize this. What does this all mean for understanding Alonzo Brooks' case now? We've gone from a young man vanishing from a party, maybe racial tension involved, to his body being found weeks later, but with no clear cause of death, to then, years later, a confirmed homicide thanks to new forensics. And now, hints of maybe a bigger conflict involving a second party and a fight earlier that night. It's quite a journey.
It really is. And this case perfectly highlights how complex these investigations can be. Where the initial findings point one way or just inconclusive, but then later evidence, maybe new science or just persistent digging, it changes everything. Think about it. That perceived misunderstanding about the ride home, the alleged slurs, now add in a possible fight spilling over from another location. It paints a much more complex and troubling picture of his final hours.
Yeah, it feels less like a single incident and more like a convergence of potentially dangerous situations.
Exactly. And it's that reevaluation, often pushed by families like the Brooks, combined with new forensic tools. Absolutely. And this case really makes you think, doesn't it? About all those other unsolved mysteries out there, especially the ones where the initial investigation just seemed to hit a dead end. What does it tell you, the listener, that Alonzo Brooks' death could be reclassified as homicide after so many years of uncertainty? What does that say about truth? Maybe how it can be hidden or obscured, but also with the incredible persistence of his family and the real power of looking at old evidence with fresh eyes and new technology. At least you're wondering.